Hello and welcome to the Typescript generic type. So in this video we gonna be learning the fundamental of the generic type in Typescript. So what is generic? So we gonna be discussing right here. So generic is one of the most important concept in every statically typed language such as Java, C Sharp, or maybe a Dart, because these are generically typed language. What does generic mean? Basically, generic is a way of defining a type. It means it is restricting the type so that we can use it multiple times. Suppose it is actually a type where you can define over any function or any classes, and actually we can reuse that component or that classes again and again, and that make the more flexibility of our system, and that's so much easy for this somehow just defining our type or maybe fetching the data from the API. That's what generic use. So generic, if I say generic in a nutshell, because it's actually a type which can be used over any class or function to actually just set the type, actually is setting the type. So that's it, my dear friends. So I'm gonna start from the scratch by deleting all this code. Just we will start working on this Typescript project. So I have started a project named generic Typescript where I have initialized the Typescript project. So how can I get started using generic? So I'll start using the normal way, and just we will move to other generic. So if I just create a file name index.ts, and if I just open the terminal, and as you can see, I have a lot of terminal running on, and this, I'm gonna close everything. So we'll be using the Typescript. So I have already just watching my Typescript here. It is in the watching mode. It means that whenever our Typescript file changes, it will just again re-render and just compile the JavaScript Typescript code to the JavaScript. So let's get started by creating the normal function. I assume that you almost know the concept of the JavaScript. And just suppose if I create the function get data, basically it's a normal function where it has nothing, just it is a void function and returning the void. Suppose we want to take a parameter of the value, and basically it's a string. So what does this mean? Because it is taking a parameter and it should be a string. Suppose we want to return this string value, so we are returning this. So if I call the function and get data, so as you can see, Typescript start complaining. What does it mean? Because we record this parameter here, this zone, suppose zone do. We pass the parameter zone do, and our JavaScript code run, and just if we just run the code, this we will get nothing because we are not just console log this output. Suppose if I just pass this function over the console log here, just if I copy here over here and Ctrl S save, and our Typescript file will be changes and this JavaScript also changes. So run this JavaScript code. So we got the zone do, but how can we actually achieve this with a generic type? So remember one thing, if you are totally a beginner in Typescript, suppose if I try to type the number, because it does not accept the number because it is a generic console.log get data. So it is console log get data. So so it is complaining that number is not assignable to type of string, so we have to pass it as a string. This is the basic overview of the Typescript. So how can we actually achieve this with this generic type? Suppose the string has the capability of just using the two uppercase and everything. So how we actually can use with help of generic? So let's not talk too much about this and just create the same function get data. So we have the value here, this a parameter, we should be of the type generic. So how can we actually define the generic type? What does this generic mean? Because basically it's actually not defining the uh, main types such as string, primitive, not defining the primitive types such as string, boolean, or any number, but we just will define a dynamic type of generic. So it might be this, but when you call the function, we will give this type. So what is the so the syntax of the generic is using the angle bracket, and where we pass our generic type name. Suppose t and u is basically the considered recommendation way of defining the type, but it doesn't mean that you have to just type t and u. You can type anything. Suppose if I just make it generic and I type t, and the parameters will be of type t, it means that the value will be of type t. But what is type t? We actually didn't know. Just when you call the function, we will know what is the type t. So just if I just return the value, so I have to call the function just get data, and as you can see, expected one argument. So if I type just, it works. But how we actually know what is here? We have to just pass our data types. Suppose as you can see, it passes a generic here, and it is basically a string. Suppose what I mean by this, we have to type this for this string. We are assuming that it will be a string. Suppose if I type the number is not assignable to the type t, because we are passing here the string, but we are just giving here the number, because number is not assignable to the string, so we have to pass it as a number. This is how generic works. So I have told you that we can use this multiple times, because it's now a reusable component like. So it is a reusable function where you can use multiple times. What I mean by this, if I just control C BBB and just changing the type of the string, it is a string, so it should be a string. Okay, it is a string, so we can pass a boolean here. For boolean, it is a boolean. Boolean should be always true or false, as you can see. So we can pass as an array, we can pass a string, we can pass a string of the array. As you can see, the value should be always of the type t. It means that we cannot assign to the array. So if we want to assign to the array, we can use like this. Again, it's complaining over here. So how can we actually fix this problem? So in this case, we can use the type called union type. Basically, what is union type? So union means using the combination of the multiple type and returning the single type. Suppose we have a bunch of information about, suppose apple, banana. So for choosing this over apple or banana, you can choose over apple or banana. So like this, we have an array. So it's complaining over here, because this is actually not an array. This is a data type rather than array, which is a number or a string. So we can pass over this or operator, and we can make it as a t. So now our code become both the array as well as the other data types. So this is how generic works. Suppose if you want to pass over this, just copy the function and just paste. So you want to make this number. So this should be what? This should be the array of the number, because we are passing the number over here, and just you have to pass 1 2 3 4 something like this, because actually this this is how this generic works. But this is not a valid example, but we have not come to the actual real world scenario. But I want to just clear the concept of the beginner who was just wondering how the generic works. So this video might be so much lengthy, but I want to just clear the confusion over the beginners. So we can make the another function over here by defining the interface. Suppose I just define the interface over here. So basically, what is interface? Somebody might be asking about what is interface. Basically, interface is a way of declaring our type. It means like it's giving the type. So what should be the information? So which we can pass over the function or arrays like that. Suppose we create the interface over here and the idata. Basically, it's a convention of creating an interface. So this is the actual syntax of the interface, and whatever the variable you wanna type, and open close curly bracket. Suppose in our interface we need a string of data name. Basically, name should be a string, as everybody knows. Age should be a number, because now age should not be a string or other thing. Suppose email. So emails we should be string, because email is a string, because string is a combination of all of the characters. So I will be creating one object here, basically user data. So it's actually a normal JavaScript object, but we're gonna give the type over here. That is the beauty of the TypeScript, so that we are using TypeScript, because we didn't know what this data contains. So if you want to give the restriction, it should be only this, then we can use the TypeScript interface, or you can call the type, because there are two of defining type basically in TypeScript. One is a type and another is an interface. So I love interface. It doesn't mean that we always need to use interface. Somehow the type is so much handy, so we can pass over here by colon idata. Actually now start complaining what I mean by this, because all the fields are mandatory field. We need to pass over here. Suppose name, just suppose if I type John Doe, age basically 40, because TypeScript is providing the auto completion over here. Email. Now TypeScript is happy, John Doe @gmail.com. So what I mean by this, actually this is not a generic type. So I want to conclude you to the generic type. That is why I have constructed a normal interface over a function, over a object here. Sorry for the function. So how can we actually achieve this with the generic? So remember one thing, suppose we want to pass the generic. I have said you that you just have to use the open close anchor tag, or you can call, I'm sorry for this saying anchor tag, basically it's a angle bracket. We can use angle bracket, and actually what we can do here is we can pass the interface. So let's do it here. Suppose if I want to console the log and user data dot name, as you can see we can access over here. So this is actually a basic object where you can just make a way to make the generic type. Sorry for the generic, where you make the interface and pass over here. So let's make this generic. So how can we actually make it generic? So let's comment out this as well. So we will again create the same name, interface idata. What is I means? Basically we are creating an interface. That is why it is there is a way of this. It is a way just of convention of writing the interface, nothing more. Idata, and actually we are not. I said we are not be using the generic. So how can we use this generic? This tu. So we are using the two generic type. Suppose name will be t. We don't know what is the name will be, but it is giving the type of t. So age will be u type. But remember one thing, age cannot be a string. So it should be always number. So how can we actually make it a string? Oh, sorry, number we'll do in a later. But age, email should be a type t. So now let's create an object again, this user data, and pass this idata over here. So it will start complaining, and as you can see, generic require two type. But suppose if I type just name, it is not showing the auto completion over here. Suppose if I type just something like this, something like that. So what is user data? So we need to pass a generic type over here. Just use the angle bracket. And what I mean by this should be a string. First should be a string. Basically the key should be a string, and the value should be of what should be the value. Suppose if I type this string on the value, so we have to pass over here. So string, as you can see, it starts throwing the error is a number. So how can we actually achieve this? Because I have just a little bit talk about this union type. Either we can create a union type by here, just a string or a number. Now it will not throw the error. But another way we can just use in a more concise way. So how can we just actually achieve this? So basically we are creating an interface and creating an object where you pass the interface, and the key should be of the string, and the value should be either the age, either the string or a number. So this is how generic works in TypeScript. But this is not the actual the real world scenario, but it might come in handy as soon as you start understanding generic and how it works. But I just wanted to try a lot on generic and by creating the function and classes over here. But this video might be so much lengthy, and that will be so much hard to digest for all the beginner, and this long video people doesn't like watching this long video. That is why I am just actually just cutting this video right here, so we can make a lot on generic. So I will just make a new video on generic, how we can actually use in classes, or maybe a real world scenario by just working the asynchronous function and just fetching the data from the API. So if you find this really helpful, just you can give a like and just comment your queries, what you did not understand, what should we just improve to make this better ahead. So thank you very much for just having here, and I am so much optimistic and delighted for having you here, and thank you so much for having here.